Okay, welcome to part 3 of the code tutorial walkthrough for the Django web framework. As you can see, we're on the tutorial part 3 webpage. Previously, we got an app. We got the database model working, and we started off the admin user interface to be able to add records to the database. This time, I think we're going to build out the application a little more. We're going to be focusing on creating the views, the public interface of the application. So a view is a type of web page in your Django application that generally serves a specific function and has a specific template. By template, I assume that means some sort of HTML page template. So these are examples of views: a blog homepage, an entry detail page. Okay. In this application that we're making, the poll application will have 4 views. The question index page, it displays the latest few questions. The question detail page displays a specific question. The question results page displays the results for a particular question. And a vote action handles votes for a particular choice in a particular question. Okay. In Django, web pages and other content are delivered by views. Each view is represented by a Python function. We already saw an example of that last time. So let me bring up the text editor. And close this video player really quick. Okay, there is Adam. I think we are ready. A view. Okay, that's our views file. There we go. There's our views file, and it just returns this text hello world. So when it says a view is a function, there's our function. Now, in your time on the web, you might have come across such beauties as these. A URL pattern is usually more simple in Django, I would imagine. Let's write more views. So we're going to add more of these functions, which are called views, and each of them will return an HTML response. So let's do that. I'm going to copy these word for word. Okay, so this view is actually going to receive a parameter called question ID, and then we're gonna render the ID. Okay, this ID is probably going to be a number. That's the vibe I'm getting. I'm gonna assume that is the case. Somehow I don't have word wrapping turned on, so I'll do the wrap manually. Okay, for the results, you're looking at the results of question. Okay, I don't care to type all of this out because it's just kind of repetitive, and I'm not learning anything new by typing it all out, so I'll speed it up by copying and pasting that. Now we're gonna need to wire these up. Having a view isn't going to do anything unless you activate it by adding them to this URL patterns variable inside of the urls.py. So let's go ahead and do that. And I think everything that's listed here is going to go under the polls sub URL. So if this is empty string, that would be polls / empty string. But if it were the path had this integer parameter in it, it would be polls / some integer parameter. So here, this is new syntax that we're encountering. So I'll go ahead and type this in. And then I will talk about it. Okay, so this is this sort of tag notation. That looks like a syntax for defining parameters, and it looks like there's a colon. The thing to the left of the colon is a type specifier, and then the thing that comes after the colon is the name of the parameter. And I think suspiciously this name of this parameter matches the name here. I don't know if it actually has to match or not, or whether it's positional, but this name might have to match. We can test it later to see if we name this different out of sync with this name. We would break things. But in any case, this syntax defines a parameter. So this is going to mean that we're going to have something like that, as I said. And this 4 is sort of going to match this integer parameter that we have specified, and then whatever this number is, it will end up going in. If I split this to show it a little bit, to show it side by side. So basically, this number gets matched as this integer parameter, and then specifically the parameter question ID, it's gonna get passed to the views.detail function, which is actually this one. And this question ID gets fed into here, and then we're calling this function. This question ID gets fed in here. So that's how things are working. So we're going to So now let's go ahead and put the rest of these in. So we're basically going to have a path that looks like polls and then /number. And then we're going to have another path that looks like polls /numbers /results. And this goes into views.results. And then the name of this view is also results. Seems slightly redundant. So this is going to look like, I will actually list out. I'm going to say this is an example. Polls /5/results. If the URL in the address bar basically looks like this, then it'll go over here. So here it's just polls/results. Polls/5. I think this slash at the end is optional, so I'll take it off. And then the first one is just polls with nothing coming after it. All right. And then I will wire the last one up, which is the vote one, polls vote. Oh, I forgot the comma here. Okay, so that's probably all of it. Okay, I think we wired that up, and now we're going to run the Django app, the development version of the Django app, which you do by python manage.py run server. Okay, now we can go to localhost 8000 / polls / 34. Does 34 exist? You're looking at question 34. Okay, so that worked. So it hit this route definition, which made it go to the views.detail view, which is, my computer is lagging, unfortunately, which is this one, and it made it render this string. You're looking at question 34, whatever that 34 is. So a question before was if I sort of change the name of this parameter. Does this parameter name have to match this parameter name inside the function? So I'll just say crazy ID. I'll change it up and try it again, see if it breaks. It does break. Detail got an unexpected keyword argument, crazy ID. So this name does have to match the parameter name of the view function on the inside. Okay, and now we're back. Alrighty, that's good to know. Let's move on. Let's hit a couple of the other ones. So there's the vote URL. You're voting on question 34, and then there is the results URL. I believe you're looking at the results of question 34. Okay, so we have all of them wired up. Now let's write views that actually do something. So each view is responsible for doing one of two things: returning an HTTP response object containing the content of the requested page, or raise an exception such as 404. The rest is up to you. Your view can read records from a database or not. It can use a template system such as Django's, or a third-party Python template system or not. It can generate a PDF, output XML. It can do anything you want. Anything that a web browser can ask a web server for, it can do, is what it's trying to say. Okay. So here it's saying, let's make a modification to the index view, which is this one here. I'm gonna collapse the other ones. Oh, we're focusing on this one. It's saying we're gonna actually fetch the questions, order it by the published date. I think negative might mean in reverse order. right? And then we're going to take the top 5. So the 5 most recently published questions, and then just concatenate those questions into a comma delimited list. Okay, let's do that. Latest question list equals question dot objects dot order by negative pub date. I guess we'll need some questions there for this to work. And then output is gonna be a comma joining, and then this is a list comprehension syntax, which it works like a map function of an array, if you know what that is. Okay, so it's gonna basically grab the question text string for each question in this question list, and that's our output, and we'll put it in here. So let's try that, and I don't even have to restart the server to get new result, which is pretty beautiful, unless it doesn't work. Oh, it doesn't work because we had a syntax error. Okay, let's fix that. Line 5. Oh, I'm not allowed to do a new line here. Question is not defined because we need to import it. Okay, so the models are in here. So from dot model, is it models? Yeah, models plural. I'm gonna import question. I could also import star, which would import all of the models. I think I might do that. Or not. Oh, there we go. What's for dinner? What's new? It worked. Okay, sometimes the reload takes a while for it to stabilize, I guess. So you don't want to refresh the browser while it's still reloading. Or does it automatically reload the browser for you? I'm not sure. In any case, so we did that. Okay, there's a problem here though. The page design is hard-coded in the view. If you want to change the way the page looks, you'll have to edit the Python code. Is that really a problem? That might be debatable, but but the point is we're gonna use a HTML template. I'm gonna use Django's template system to separate the design of the page from the Python code. I think part of the point is that there are some web designers who might not want to touch Python, and if we separate it in this way, then they don't have to. So first, we're going to create a directory called templates in your polls directory. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I did it. Now, your project's templates setting. So it's in here. Templates. Okay, this is the template setting. So your project's template setting describes how Django will load and render templates. The default settings file configures a Django templates backend whose app-doors option is set to true. Right, that's true, although I have no idea what that means. By convention, Django templates looks for, where's Django templates? Oh, this guy. This guy is Django templates, which is a backend for the template. You can swap in different template backends, is what I gather. Like there might be a different template backend that might be Jinja, which is different. It has different syntax and different convention, etc. but we're using the default Django provided template backend. Okay, so by convention, Django templates looks for a template subdirectory in each of the installed apps. Okay, that makes sense. And to refresh your memory, these are our installed apps, and specifically this one is the polls app that we are working on, whereas the other ones are for the admin app and probably other stuff that the admin app depends on. Within the templates directory you have just created, create another directory called polls. Seriously? Okay, that seems a little bit redundant. So polls slash templates slash polls. Oh, it's not supposed to be a file. It's supposed to be another directory. So let me undo that. Okay, try again. New folder, polls. All right, another directory called polls. So now I have make an index.html file. Okay, so I should have polls slash template slash polls slash index HTML, which that looks like that's what I have. I can hover over here to see that that's what I have. And because of how the app directories template loader works as described above, you can refer to this template within Django as polls slash index HTML. Template name spacing. Now we might be able to get away with putting our templates directly in polls slash templates rather than creating another polls subdirectory. But it would actually be a bad idea. Django will choose the first template it finds whose name matches. And if you had a template with the same name in a different application, Django would be unable to distinguish between them. We need to be able to point Django at the right one, and the best way to ensure this is by name spacing them. That is, by putting those templates inside another subdirectory named for the application itself. Okay, that's slightly weird. I think what it's saying is if you had another application other than polls, maybe call it pictures or something. You had another application called pictures, maybe. And then under pictures you had templates. And then under templates you had index. And then if under your polls you also have the same directory structure, like let's say this is polls, and then it has templates, and then instead of having another sort of name spacing directory here called polls here, if you have index.html, then these two index HTMLs would sort of compete with each other, and there's no way for Django to tell the difference when you say render the index HTML template, which is why we add a extra level of subdirectory here just for the naming's sake, so that polls, which seems strange to me because a app framework like Django, I would have expected it to be able to use the knowledge that it's already within the polls subdirectory when it's executing one of those views, but apparently it doesn't do that, which is fine. Let's continue. So now we created this index HTML file. We're going to add in the template. Wow, that's a lot of typing, but I'm going to do it. So this is, I don't know what kind of template language this is, but it's pretty familiar to me. I have used something like this before. I just don't remember the name. Maybe it's called the Django templating syntax, templating language. But essentially, it's got some Python embedded inside the HTML, and the way you can tell it's Python is by these delimiters, this bracket %, and then %, bracket. Within those brackets is some Python, but weirdly you don't use the colons in this Python. And the template isn't indentation aware as normal Python is. So here we have access to this variable, which the view is going to have to pass in to this HTML file, to this template. We haven't done that yet, I don't believe, but we are going to. So let's just type in this code here. So we have a UL. Oh, there's an else. So basically, if we have a latest question list, then we want to display a unordered list. Otherwise, we're just gonna display a paragraph that says no polls are available. But if we're displaying the unordered list, then we're gonna use a for loop. Like this, for each question in the list of latest questions. And then we'll end the for loop. We're gonna make a list item, an li, and then within the li we'll make an anchor tag. It's going to go here, and this is a variable substitute. I'm gonna make it nice and indented in contrast to how because I am using a smaller line width in my text editor. Okay, question text. So these double curly brackets just takes whatever is in that Python code, or evaluates whatever is in that Python code. We usually expect that to be a string, and then it just splats it out into the HTML right in this location. So that happens here. That's also going to happen here, and I believe this is going to be the question ID. So basically this is going to be a link. The link's going to, the display of the link is going to be the question's text, but when you click on the link it'll go to the detailed page. Or is it the detailed page? Or it might be the questions, like if I go to, I'm just looking at it's just the question page for the question with that ID. Okay. Will this work? No, I have to call template.render. So I'm gonna need to change this. Instead of creating the output as a string here, we still keep this line that queries the latest questions. That doesn't have to change. That still works. But it looks like we're gonna have to load a template using a loader. A loader is coming from the Django template loader. From Django.template import loader. This shortcuts thing, we're not being asked to use it. I have a feeling we could use this shortcuts, but the tutorial is not telling us about it, so I'm going to leave it alone. And let's continue this. So we're using the template loader to load the template in question, and now we're gonna need to call the template. We need to create a context first in order to call that template with. So the context is the context just has the variables that are gonna be passed to the template, which we need this variable, the latest question list. Yep, to be passed to the template, and once we have that, we can call the template template.render and give it the context to use, and it also is going to need the request object apparently. Okay, we can probably run that now. Probably need to wait for the guy to reload. Yes! Wow, that works. Those are all our questions rendered in an unordered list, and if we inspect the page, we can see our handiwork here. Yep, there's the unordered list with the li items, which we created here, and the anchor tags that we created here. What is this colon marker thing? That must be a thing that Django has created for its internal uses. Okay, so we've done that. Let's move on. Oh, shortcut, there we go. That's the shortcut that I was just mentioning. So actually, we didn't have to do this whole template loader thing. We could have just done return. So instead of all this, this line stays the same, but we could have just created the context, which we do here, and just returned render request, the name, the path to the template, and the context, instead of using the template loader directly and then calling template.render. So let's do that. So we don't need this anymore. And we replace those two lines with return render request polls index.html context. And this should still work. Wait for it to reload, and we're there. So, okay. So that did answer my question. So I don't need this anymore. Don't need this. And this is a slightly shorter way of writing this. And it makes sense because you'll probably need to do a similar thing in all the other views as well. And it starts getting tedious when you have to write that much. Okay. So we no longer need to import HTTP requests. Okay. If you're just using render all the time, you don't even need to import HTTP response, basically. Raising and a 404 error. Okay, let's raise a 404 error. The page that displays the question text for a given poll. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so we're gonna move on to this detail view, and we're gonna be given a question ID. So this is when we say some ID / detail. Then it hits this detail view here. Did I set that up right? Oh, there's no detail. It's just this. Okay. Oh, I have a syntax error. End of line while scanning a string literal. Oh, that. Okay, we're back. Forgot to close this this string, so we had a syntax error. Okay, now let's collapse this one, and we're gonna work on the detail. So we're looking at this detail view, and we're gonna change the code to make it actually fetch the question of this given ID and display some stuff on the screen about that question. And we're actually gonna raise an HTTP 404 error if that question with that ID does not exist in the database. So we're gonna try to look up the question using question.objects.get with we're gonna get the question whose primary key. We could also have done ID, but the tutorial chooses primary key. His primary key is equal to the passed in question ID, which will be that one, whatever it is in the URL. And then except means when there's an exception, and the exceptions type is question that does not exist, then we're gonna raise the HTTP 404 error and say question does not exist. I think we'll probably have to import the 404, yeah. So let's do that. Excuse me. Okay, so let's import this 404 error. And okay, so but if we didn't raise an error, then we're gonna return and render something. Return and render the first parameter of render is the request, and then I will say polls/detail.html, and then the context, we're just gonna inline the context is question. Okay. Yeah, we have to go. I personally prefer moving this return statement inside of the try. The control flow seems to be more obvious that way. I understand both ways work, but I think I prefer this way for some reason. And now we're gonna create this detail.html template so that this will actually be able to find a template, which is what we were planning on. And looks like this is we're just gonna put the question on the page. That's all we're going to do. That will get you started for now. So let's try this. Question has no attribute object. I think that means it should actually be plural objects. I typed object, and it didn't like that. I do like very much the error messages given by Django. It has been helpful so far. So this just says what's new, which is the text of the question, and that's what this template rendered, is just the text of the question, and that will get me started for now. A shortcut. Oh, okay, there's a shortcut for writing this try catch thing. Apparently. So we didn't even have to do it like this, which is, so I should take this render back outside, and then we basically gonna replace this try except here with simply get object or 404, and we pass in the model class, and the query parameters we want to use. And it will do this try except for us and raise the exception for us so that we don't have to. What a concept. All right. So does that work? No, because we forgot to import this guy. Okay, let's import it. It's coming from the shortcuts module as well. Okay, and that worked. Now let's try an ID. I should have tested with the try except, but I'm just gonna try with this. So yeah, an ID that doesn't exist, we get this page now, which is nice. It tells you Django tried these URL patterns with this error. This is good for debugging, I must say. Okay. Next. Philosophy. Why do we use a helper function instead of automatically catching the object does not exist exception at a higher level, or having the model API raise HTTP 404 instead of object does not exist, because that would couple the model layer to the view layer. Yeah, that makes sense to me. He's saying why can't the act of just calling question objects.get, why can't that just raise an error? It raised a 404 error specifically, but because that would couple. Now the model, the database stuff has to know about the HTTP stuff, because 404 is an HTTP term, and that would increase the coupling. That's why we have to use a separate shortcuts module for this. All right, so now we have the shortcut. We don't need this long cut stuff. Fine. Now we're gonna update the detail page to look more like an actual page. So we're gonna have a H1 heading, and then we're gonna have an unordered list. It's actually gonna show all the choices that are linked to this question by looping through the choice set. Looks a little bit suspicious to me, that choice set.all. I thought that was a method, but maybe it's not. Like I would have thought you needed to call this guy, but it doesn't. We can try in the shell to do that and see what happens. So I can do python manage.py shell and do from that polls models import star from polls models. Okay, question dot objects dot all gets me one question, and so my question is this first question, let's say, from the database. And I have a question, and from the question I can have a choice set, and I can say choice set dot all. This is a method actually. Now we actually get, so this is a method. This is a method, you have to call it, but I'm a little bit confused why we don't call the method in the template. That's interesting. I will go along with it. The tutorial will probably answer the question. So I'm gonna go look at the first question. Did I make, oh, I had to restart the server. Python manage.py run server. It worked. Okay. All right. Let's read about this. Yeah. Okay, this addresses my question. So the method calling happens inside these brackets for the for loop. Question.choice.all is interpreted as Python code. Question.choiceSet.all parentheses, which returns an iterable of choice objects, is suitable. So in the template language is not really Python. It's Python like, but I have a feeling that whoever designed the template language, they wanted to make it they want to reduce the power of the language, and they don't want they don't want you to be calling functions, is the vibe I'm getting. So even though choiceSet.all is a method call, you don't actually call it explicitly within the template scripting code. But the interpreter will actually call it automatically when it sees that it is actually a callable thing. Okay. There's more. If you want to learn more about the templates, you can read about it more. Is this just a general documentation page for the templates? Yes, it is. Okay. We can do this later. All right. Now we're gonna remove hard-coded URLs in the templates. Those are these. I think we're going back to the index page, and they're saying this hard-coded URL here, like explicitly writing /pols/ that's hard-coded. I bet there's a way to generate that dynamically, and it looks like this. Because this allows you to change the URL configuration here. So there's like a URLs configuration here that says /pols/something goes to pols, and if you hard coded it here, if you later on you want to change it here, then you have to go in all the places where you hard coded the URL and change it manually. So if you use this URL helper, then it takes into account the URL patterns that you define at the application level, and so it's not referenced explicitly like that here. So let's do that. So that page would be, let me close this page, that page would be this top level pols page, this one. So I should change it, and it should not break that. Okay, does this work? I have 2 levels of double quotes, which makes me worried. So I'm going to change to single quote on the inside. Try that. Oh, I don't need this slash at the end anymore. Looks like that worked. It didn't. Okay, it still works. I'll try to break it just to make sure. I'm gonna misspell detail. Yep, okay. That's like if something works, but I'm not sure it's using the latest version of my code. I tried breaking it just to ensure that it actually is taking my code. Okay. So this is, I guess, the more proper way to do it, so that it's resilient to changes you make in this URL configuration file. Right, and it says the way it works is actually this URL helper will take into account information in your URL pattern settings. Well, this is a very long chapter. Namespacing URL names. The tutorial project has just one app called Pools. In real Django projects, there might be 5, 10, 20 apps or even more. Wow. How does Django differentiate the URL names between them? For example, the Pools app has a detail view, and so might an app on the same project that is for a blog. How does one make it so that Django knows which app view to create for an URL when using the URL helper template tag? The answer is to add namespaces to your URL conf. Oh, okay. I see. Okay. So basically we should add an app name and call that polls inside the urls.py of polls, so that our URL helper knows when we're talking about detail, it's talking about polls / detail. Okay. That seems like not so nice. Seems like it should be able to infer it, but okay. Just know that that's something you might want to do when you have a lot of different apps, but currently we only have one, really. Okay, but if you do this, then we want to change here in the URL helper. We want to change this to polls : detail. Double check that still works. It seems to. I'm gonna mess it up to see it breaking. Okay, and then put it back. Okay. Okay, so this is really what you're supposed to do in terms of a best practices, so that even these URL thingamajiggies are namespaced to your application, and you have to remember to do this app name thing. Although if you're writing it like this, you will have to have the app name in order for this to work, because I imagine if you forget to put this app name here, that's gonna break. No? Yeah, that's gonna break. So yeah, if you want to be able to write it namespaced like this in the URL helper, you're gonna have to put this app name here, so you probably won't forget. Okay, so that's part 3. That's part 3, and part 4 is going to be the next one following this one.